Oh, I didn't put you guys' ski pictures. It's a giant.
Wait, you never had your time short chapter? No, I didn't. Oh yeah, I remember my. Yeah, but you made class ID. It takes 2 seconds. Oh, and I really like this. This is
Okay, Colton says he's sick and he might present. I'm going to see if he wants to go first as we let our late people get here. See if we can get everybody here. So hang on and let's see if we hear back from him. Let him present and go back to bed or whatever it is that he's going to do. We wait way too much longer because we have an XML project that we need to get working on. So you guys have an example today. So let's see. Just let me go. He says email back. It looks like we have almost everybody. Group 2 or group 4. Colton's going to be here for group 3 maybe. Maybe should so we have almost everybody for group 3 too. So who wants to go first? We're going to go ahead and do the remote control of your computer from the Zoom session, like we did last time. If you remember how to do it, you can do the share and then some updated say remote control. All you're running back and forth so they're sharing with each other. So since we've got a hurry, I'm going to try really hard to set my timer for 2 minutes for each person. So if it buzzes while you're talking, don't be embarrassed or upset or anything. We just want to get done so we can get to our XML project. So show us your important stuff first, the stuff that was challenging that you had to really work out. It's probably going to be the same for everybody. Last night somebody was messaging me on Discord. I don't know if it was any of you guys because they hadn't changed their nickname, so I don't even know who it was. But it was really late for me, and they showed me this code that had like 4 2-dimensional arrays or something in it, and I was like, yeah, I don't know. not at 10 o'clock at night from my debugging abilities has been exceeded. So if you have something really complicated like that, let's see what you
sounds like they were probably overthinking it a
I think maybe. But it's hard to say, you know, so I told them I need to simplify. When I say to simplify, I mean things like create a variable to hold this data element instead of re-accessing a two-dimensional array repeatedly. I think that as we go through, we'll see some really good ways to simplify. Let's pick on study group. I can't remember which one we picked on first last time. Let's pick on study group 3, because I don't think we've ever picked on study group first, have we? Let's try. You guys remember how to remote control the Zoom session? Share, yeah. Connect to the Zoom session, and then you should be able to share your screen, and then you should be able to remote control it.
Yeah, just keep up.
I'm sure there's something amazing we can do from the front. You can see it. I have the Zoom session showing me this big screen here. Just a sec.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you could come up here and tell us who you are and take over your viewers control.
Oh my God. Okay. Then we'll be trying to figure out what I'm just trying to open it right now. I close it.
Oh, okay.
Okay. I'll probably start first. Hey everyone, we are group 3 and Clint, and yeah, this is my code. It's a Pig Latin code. Pong helped me a lot in this one. Okay. I started. What is this? I started making a Pig Latin class, and then make the program. Make a program that as a tester class. So I made this. I made a global variable for the all vowels, although Y is not a vowel, but it was included for some reason in the Pig Latin thing. And then I made a method also with, its name is Pig Latin, and it's weird, but it's passing an argument from the program class, which is the main class as a tester. And then I got my 4 int. This is what the magic goes in, like to rearrange the letters by the position stuff, and have and this one is, if in this statement, if the position, if the first letter of the rewritten word, if it's either a vowel or what was it, the other vowel? I forgot, but yeah, if it starts a not vowel and it gives this word plus 10 plus this word, pick that, and then it return an output. There's also a translate method which passes this string, and if ever have a space in that, there's a word split, and that's if it's doing a sentence, and then it goes to an end, and then it runs the Pig Latin method, and then it translates over there. Oh, my bad. Let me run for a little bit. See. There you go.
Is it right? You guys look at it because you've been doing the testing.
Okay, it gets fixed. Thank you. Thank you.
I can look at it like, is it okay? Any questions about this code now that he's shut the share there? Read about
Got
that.
to quick share for Becky.
You share and request. Give or you give control to her.
But I just wanted to say I like the idea of having the tester. And this application could be a console-based or a forms-based one. There isn't any sort of requirements there. Do you guys like the way he handled that with the separate Latin class? I like it. Thank you. Man. Okay. The next person is taking over the screen. As we speak.
Oh, yeah.
I said David can't do anything. Thank you.
Quick remote control.
Mhm. Don't even need any notes. Okay.
I did the bucket sort. Working. Okay. I made a sorting class. This is the main part of it. I pretty much make a multi-dimensional array with 10 rows and then columns set by the number of values that you want to sort. And then from there, I just pull the numbers from the original array and put them into the multi-dimensional array using a, for the first pass, using a modulo 10. And then the second pass, dividing by 10, and then finding the remainder. And then I just, after each pass, put everything back into the original array using this nested for loop. I'll go ahead.
You're putting stuff into the array. How did you decide what element to put it into?
What
Array element to?
putting it back into the,
Your indexes.
from the row and column of the multidimensional array, I check if the value in that array is greater than 0, and if it is, then I just had a counter for the
That's what I was curious. Thank you.
1D array. So I just use the console to test it.
So if we look after the first pass, we should see everything in order by the ones digit. So all the things that are the 0 in your ones digit and the 1, because that was that first pass. And then after the second pass, we should see everything in the 10 digit.
Did you let your random number 100? Or did it go to 99?
I think I actually set it at 100, so I need to do 101. And then I think I would need to put a third pass in for that third place. But
So is there a way that we could have figured out how many passes were going to be needed and put all of that pass stuff in a loop?
Yeah, you can find the max value and then find some story. Right?
Right,
Yeah.
and so think about that, because I like the clarity of having each pass separate in your code, because it really makes you think about those passes that you're going through. But you could put those into a loop too to condense that.
Yeah, I was definitely thinking I could have cleaned it up a lot.
Good. Any other questions? Is it super fast? We have to have more stuff to be able to put a million entries in there. Who wants to test it with like 700,000? 100 billion. 100 billion two-digit numbers. We're having had so many duplicates. Single digits. I always say you get so
You need to do 100 million 6-digit numbers. Then you won't have, you'll still have duplicates. I'm
real
sure.
performance testing. Looks great. Thank you. In my hand. Yay.
Leave it running as you want to.
He's still printing out the first ring.
Yeah, because it's not ordered yet. Right.
He's going crazy with it. Kill it.
Or they stop the screen share.
Yeah. What did he have to do?
Oh, the random number would be 0. It would just be a positive.
But even 0, you have to choose that right.
Yes.
Yeah, it's like that.
Very nice.
Now last year, our student found the option where you could say that you could allow nulls in an array, like that an array of integers. And so he found that if you do that, then he had to add an initialization routine to loop through the array to set everything to null. But then he was able to test for a null value and use 0 as a number. But it was a real lot of messing around to get that null value allowed in the array. But it is something you could do. And another thing you could do is you could go through and initialize your array to like -1 for some value that you're not going to have in your sort. And then you would be able to test for that if you needed to accommodate for 0. So you would have to do some extra initialization of your array.
There's actually a third option you could do, and I'll talk about it when I show mine.
Oh, great. Okay, good. All right. All right, we're ready.
All right. I basically did set the buckets here and to the list. This is where my list gets rearranged, I guess, or sorted, if you want to call it that. And this is where my where I get my numbers, like 0 to 5, I think. I mean 0 to 100. I think that's what you said. Did you say 5 digits, or like did we need like 10 digits in a row? I read as like 5 digits. So, and I printed. I actually printed my first numbers here, the not sorted one, and I sorted it here and then just like printed it. And when I run it, this is what it looks like. It should be a little different, I think, but this is what I could manage. So this is basically it. And this is what my my main looks like, and that's it. Any questions? I did run it. You want to run it again? All right.
So what's that showing us?
I think it's printing like where the numbers are setting, like in rows. It should, and then like replacing each one to like where it should be, and just like printing it out after it's doing that. There's like two 17s, like, and this is like the 17 in this order, and it's just like flipping, or it just doesn't matter at that point because it's just like same number. So yeah, but I don't know why it's doing it the second time though. It's just like it should be doing it just like once. Maybe it's just like doing an order where like it's gonna print that way, you know. Yeah, that's it.
So remember, this sort is a really good opportunity to use your debugger.
Okay.
Test through things and
Oh.
figure out exactly what's going on.
Okay.
It's coming out with the right info, but it's not exactly sure about the printing. I think the printing.
Yeah, that's where like I was like, what was happening? You know, like I tried it like many different ways, and it just like always like it always came out like that though. I don't know why that was doing that.
Inside each bucket. So it's doing a double sort. It's to be sorted. That's why it's coming out that way. Okay. Thank you. Any
Interesting. Yeah.
Let's give them all a hand. Great job. I like it. Okay. Then we're back from Satan, the culture, I'm sorry. So let's go to study group 2, which is,
I can go ahead and go.
yeah.
I'm just
all of
going
you
to,
guys.
I'm just going to take my laptop up there though.
All of you have some programmers.
I do have a question for the class before I get on to the particulars of my program as a whole. Is there a reason we're doing this on a console app? Did I miss something on that?
There was no.
I did that too, because that just made a lot more sense for what I wanted to do with it. And
Yeah, it's fine either way.
okay. I just wondered about that. Where are we? There's the code. So here is my form. And we can see right here where we've got our list. I can hit reset here to get a new list, whatever. One of the things I wanted the ability to do was to be able to go through it one step at a time as opposed to all at once, especially because when it does it, it just changes the text. It doesn't just make a big wall of text like in a console app. So we can go step, and we have our 0 bucket. All the leftmost zeros are in there, and then the 1s and the 2s and so on. And we can step again, and it'll sort them out again by the tens place, and then the hundreds. I can check. Yep. Sorted. This is not sorted. Or if it just steps once, perhaps. No, it's still not sorted. So that shows the actual thing itself. Let's look at our code. I mentioned, Ms. Riley was talking a moment ago about how you can use a -1 or a null value. What I ended up doing was I actually declared an extra array that's separate but parallel to my buckets. And its job is just to keep track of the index it's currently at. So every time something gets added to a bucket, the appropriate bucket index gets incremented. And so then when it's dumping the buckets out, it just dumps out the first that many items. And the benefit of doing it that way is I can put literally whatever numbers I want in there. It can be 0, it can be -1, it can be negatives all the way either direction. I think I can even do decimals and doubles. I'm not sure. I'd obviously have to tweak a couple of variable declarations at the very least. The reason I can do that, though, is because I found one of the things I wanted to be able to do was when it's getting the separate digits of each number to sort them out, I actually have this function that returns it as an array. And so it passes back a little array with each digit of each number in it. And so the benefit of doing that is that I can have those numbers be as big or as small as I want to as well. I could do, like I was joking about with Colin a minute ago, I could have 10-digit numbers if I wanted. It'd take a long ass time, but it'd work. That's all I particularly have to say about it, though.
Awesome question.
Well done.
Yeah, very informative. Thank you.
I lied. I did lie. There's one bit of trivia I learned. Because I found for this function, I had to be able to count the number of digits. And I poked around online, and it turns out that this messy way of doing it is actually the fastest way to do that. It's messy, but if you're going for performance speed, that's actually the most efficient way, it turns out. It's weird.
Doing math problems.
I was weirded out by it too, but it's like, okay, I'll take it. It's definitely a lot easier to read too. Say what?
How did you share your screen?
I can't hear you.
How did you share your screen? Just hit share.
Just like
Oh,
on
so
Zoom.
it's-
My laptop can go everywhere.
That's her magic.
Who was doing it? I can't. What? All right, sorry. There you go. Share and then on the black bar, like once you share your screen, on the black bar, give access. There should be like remote access. Just give it to it. Yep.
All right, I did the bucket sort. Yep, okay. Just started by creating the original array with 100 numbers and filling it. Then we created the bucket here based on the array length. Then we started on the first pass, and it returns the original array. The first pass gets the first digit by doing modular 10, and then I have a display for it, and then it runs to the gathering pass, or right here. I have the placeholder, which helps it to keep track of if it's skipping the zeros. And that's what places it into the original array. And then it'll display it, the original array, where it's been through the first pass, not finished sorting yet. And I clear the bucket here, and I send it back through the second pass. It does pretty much the same thing, except for it gets the second number based on divided by 0. And then the third pass, we clear the bucket again, and we go to the third one. This one doesn't return anything because it should be done by now. Let me display it, and it's done. And run it. Here's the first pass, all the zeros, 1s, 2s, 3s, and so on. And the second pass goes by the second digits, and the third pass, and it should be sorted. And that is it. Any questions?
Why do you have each pass? Can you show me why each pass is a separate method?
Sure. Made each pass a different method because I didn't really think too hard on how to get it all to be, because I have to, for the first digit, you have to do modulus 10. For the second one, you have to divide by 10 instead. So I'm not sure how to make that all into one method for each different pass.
So basically what you can do is you do that modulus 10 more than once, and you just repeat. So you do the modulus 10, and you take, and then you subtract the ones place from it. And then you do the modulus 10 again, and you just...
I think I got
I know
what
I'm
you're saying.
stumbling over my words, but I hope I'm getting it across.
I think I
You can
get
do
it.
it more than once to get different places. You can make a single method and pass it, I want this place, and do your modulus bit accordingly.
Yes, you would move the modulus map out of your path and into your controlling method, so that you would set up what digit you want and then call
You could also
your path module. That was one way.
have a switch case statement for each pass that doesn't look like a function, and that you just, every time it goes through a pass.
Any
you
other
have-
questions for us? That looks really good. Really good. It looks like you're doing a bucket sort. Sometimes you guys make even more efficient sorts. That's not what we need. Really good.
I can just control. Okay, so this is I did the Piglet one. This is my main, of course. This just calls the method here, which I'm not creative with my method names, as you can see. And all this does is it just gets the word from the main, and then checks to see where the vowel is, then grabs everything before the vowel and after the vowel and separates them. And if the vowel's at the beginning, and then puts it back together and then returns it. The tricky thing I found that, because with me and Joe, it's with the Y and was Y and with the first letter being a vowel. So that's what these two variables are up here. We made a vowel Y and a vowels without it. So basically, if it's the first time, it checks vowels with the Y or without Y. If it's not, it will check it with the Y. So that's why for yellow works, basically, is why we did that. I mean, and also just any word Y, but it's one word at a time, but like you can see yellow will work. And then eating was the vowel one. So those are the two tricky ones to do, because just the nature of checking the variables. And like the help works just fine. And so yeah, just pretty simple. The thing I thought was cool, I was talking to Miss Riley this morning, was I didn't know, and I was like, yeah, I'll try it. Is you can do a read line in a method call in a write line, which looks really weird, but it makes your code look very short. Instead of having that all in like 5 different lines, having another variable to hold on to it for a second.
So along the same lines, couldn't we put a
Yeah.
for each loop above that to say, or within it, or somewhere after you read a line to say, split what you read with spaces, and for each word, process your thing. So it's pretty easy to make it do a sentence.
Yeah, the thing I was running into, and like I took it out, is like if you put more than one space, it throws it, and I'd rather just have more control, like user input to say enter a sentence and then double space, or if you have a space at the end, it throws and it messes it up because of how it adds onto the word. So it just we've just found that it was easier. I think Joe attempted to go more into the sentence. I was like, one word's good at a time. So, but yeah, you could just take a little bit of checking, more checks than to make it, I guess, foolproof. So, but yeah, any questions?
All right. Awesome. Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
I'm like trying to set that timer and put in grade.
No, I just lost my voice the last few days. Oh, all right, let me. Okay, so I did the Pig Latin one as well. I'll run it first. And I don't know if I just didn't read the instructions good enough. I thought if it didn't have any vowels, it wasn't supposed to do Pig Latin. It's like the RPM one, mine just has no vowels detected. It's pretty easy just to stick AY at the end of it, though, if I would have done it before. But so like if you use normal ones, they work. Yeah, so it works other than the no vowels. So right here, I create the variables, and this is what the user inputted into the first box, what they want to change. It takes it into always lowercase. So like in your example, I saw the RPM was uppercase, and it printed it out in uppercase. Mine's not doing that, which I could have because I didn't have the is vowel at first, and it checks for uppercase. So I guess it would have worked anyway. But here I break up what the user inputted into each word. I go through each word and put it into the get pig Latin method, and then it just prints out the result because it's just adding to this translation for each word. Down here, the get pig Latin method, I could have done the first letter because this just checks and adds way to the end the same way I did and add the AY, but I did this one first and I wasn't really thinking as much. And I just did if it's any of these vowels because it didn't include the Y either, to just add way to the end of it. Otherwise, it's going to go down here. It's going to find the index where the vowel's at, print out, or if there's no vowels, it's going to print no vowels. And then it's going to print out from the vowel, and then from the start of the vowel, or from the start to the vowel, and then just add Y to the end. And then go back to the next word in the sentence. Yeah. But yeah, that's pretty much it. I did a little extra. I could have got rid of all these loops right here, but I tried to hide them instead and just use this.
Well, I like that method.
But yeah, to be honest, the capital letters, I could just remove all those. Like, there isn't really a point to those because I'm doing to lower right at the beginning.
Everybody take a look at that. Sometimes we still see a lot of full if statements when somebody needs to return a Boolean. And remember, we can just do the condition there. And then we'll take care of returning the answer of true or false. So we don't have to have an if, return true, else return false. It doesn't do that for us. And I'd like to compare that to the comparison that Cohen did. Can we switch back over?
Yeah.
Because I think that they're both good ways. I just want to really show off the different ways we can do that.
Which part are you talking about?
Where you're deciding if there's a vowel.
This is something Joe helped me out. I was inspired a lot by Joe for this part of it.
Mm-hmm.
This part was my idea. This part was Joe's idea, which I just loved so much I couldn't not. I was trying to think of a better way to do it, but I was like, oh, I like it so much. But because it's just checking to see if, and like I'm giving credit, this is Joe's mastermind idea, but
that's great.
It basically just sees if the index is greater than 0, therefore it's not on here. There is a vowel, and at that specific point is where I start doing things. Is where we start doing things.
Yeah, that's really nice.
So if it's greater than 0, it's just it's true or false. So if it's not greater than, then it would be false. If it is, it's true.
It is not.
Or greater than or equal to, sorry.
If it's -1, it's not in the
Yeah, it's not.
string.
Yeah, it's
Which
not.
means it's not a vowel.
Yeah,
If it's anything else, it's in the string.
Yeah. because it can't be over it.
That's a neat way. So 2 different ways. I didn't mean to knock Tyler off. Any questions for him? It's an awesome off there. I like the thing of it.
I have a question. Like, why did you do a whole bunch of else ifs, not just more statements?
I could have done the or.
Okay, I was just curious because it just looked like a lot more.
Yeah, I knew it looked ugly. That's why I did it all.
Oh no, it just looked like a lot more work too. Because like you retype the way.
Oh, this is copy paste. Oh, you can tell me.
Just copied and pasted. Did you do else ifs or do you have separate ifs?
They're else ifs.
Yeah, they're else
I
ifs.
can remember.
Well, ifs would be so slow.
I know.
Check every single one.
Be a lot of checking.
Isn't the other one even slower? It's doing it the is file because it's going through every single letter.
I don't know. You need to do some sort of major comparison. probably beyond our schedule for today. Oh, that's awesome. Give him a hand. Get the whole book a hand. Okay, here are two study group 4, which is Taylor, Joey, Hunter, and Noah. Everybody's here. That's great. Awesome.
I'll go.
So I chose to do the Pig Latin one, and me and Cohen worked on it together, so ours are pretty similar. And we got our vowels the same way. Let's scroll through it here. In mine, you can actually do sentences with. And then I have it in a while loop, so you can actually do multiple sentences for each run of the program if you wanted to. You can click end to quit. Wow, that didn't work. That is the first time that's not worked.
No, we thought it was cute.
Oh, I see why it doesn't work. I was experimenting with Cohen's do the right line method and everything inside the one line, and that kind of broke my while loop. So if I didn't do that, it would have worked.
I like the nay.
This is gonna work, May. Yeah, this is my main. There's a lot of commented out codes from previous stuff, but it's pretty simple. Then back to the Pig Latin. Here's where it builds the what I call the pig phrase to actually return it. And here's where it splits the whole string into each individual word into an array. Yeah, the rest is pretty much exactly like Cohen's.
I don't know why I like you guys' spoilers. For some reason, after we do that split, I always like having, for each word in words, it just seems so clear, but it doesn't give us the index values of things that we need.
So I got you went a little bit more in depth.
Yeah, it's not enough. Questions? I think everybody knows how to do Pig Latin.
Yeah.
Don't explain it to me. I don't get it. Not the program, the Pig Latin.
The Pig Latin itself. Why do you do this?
Okay, so this is my main class, which print out the the test sentence one and allow us to enter. Oh no, I need to get a latest version. Okay, yeah. Yeah, and it got a while loop, but my while loop is just for when the user don't enter anything. On that, I can zoom in. So if the user don't enter anything, it will force you to enter something, and then it translate for you. Yeah, so at first I put the console one inside here, but I just wanted to check if the user enter anything, so I just separate it out. And this is a Pig Latin, and So the way I named the method is a little bit weird because my first plan was just translate each word in the Pigland class, and then got the other process, which is split other words on the main class. But then I decided to make it in this class, so I named that method chopping. Just basically it's put sentence in words and save it in an array, and then use the Latin class to translate each of them. So I guess the most important word is on the Latin class. Yeah, I and Clint work on this. And basically what I do is that I have an array of vowel that got Y include, and whenever I evaluate it, I just add an if to see if, and I make it run before the other if. So basically I'm just trying to check to see when it's first. I'll loop through that word and check to see when it's first need a vowel, and then I'll cut off from that position and put it to the back. And if it's Y in front here, so the fifth one and the 11th one will be the lowercase y and capitalized Y. So, and it will have an if to add way or a on the word. And down here, so this part I was trying to say word in an array like manually, but I just figured out that we got a split method, so I just don't do all of these and use a split instead. And I can run it now. Uh-oh, I have to share the whole thing, right? Okay, thank you. Yes, so if I don't type anything, it will make you type anything. And okay, and then it will translate, and it will stop because I just make it translate one. Okay, and that. Any questions?
Okay.
Okay.
You got it. Thank you.
Yeah, but I do have one question. So basically what I do is for the word is that I'm trying to find if there is a space. Oh, I see now. Okay. No, right. Okay. Thank you.
You gotta repeat all the stuff again.
Darn it. Okay. Try to get ahead and see what happens.
You should expect something like that to happen.
I do.
Okay, can you remind me how to do this again?
You have to go to here.
Okay.
And you just share it, and then on the top right, there's a little box that says request remote control, and you give it to Renee, right? Yeah, just do your screen and share, and then go to yeah, no, and then do it. That should do it.
So
My program kind of has two methods in it that sorts. Oops, does it actually? Because I tried as much as possible to get a proper bucket sort to work that just loops itself and sorts it. But I, for the life of me, could not get it to properly work how it's supposed to. However, I do have a semi-bucket sort method that does sort it correctly. It is just about 10 times longer than what it's supposed to be. So, bucket sorts are supposed to be only 10 in width, but this is 100. But it works, and it so what the sort does is that it makes a new bucket array, two-dimensional array. It creates an array index to record where it is. This just turns all the values to -1. This puts all the ends in the array so that it can be sorted later. This just outputs the bucket, and this puts all the ends into the array and sorts them. And it just returns that array. And that's basically my program. Any questions or comments?
Writing up a kind of like a bucket for each possible digit.
Yeah. I know that isn't the most efficient way to do it, but that is the only way I've managed to found.
Interesting situation with gay. One question.
Well, so if we got two number, so if we got two same number, that's gonna work. And for your random.
Oh yeah, if it's the same number, actually, I can actually change the range to 2 here. And should properly do it. Oh, it does not. Well, that's awesome. Yeah, I need to do more debugging on this later.
More questions? If you're gonna hand. What we're doing here is learning.
There's a job posting like a few years or something experience.
Switch casing, nice.
Okay, so I did the Pig Latin sort, and just see up here. And so, where did I start? So I used the switch statement to check and see if it had vowels, and I put everything in a giant for loop, so that whenever it goes through, it keeps track of which index it's going, or which pass it's going through. So it'll do, if this is the first letter, then it will do this if statement, and it checks to see if it's a vowel. So if this letter is a vowel, then it will add way to the end of the word, and if it's not a vowel, then it'll save what was before the vowel into this before vowel,
variable. And then if it's not the first letter, then it'll go through and do all that. Sorry, I looked at this pretty late last night, so I'm just, yeah. But yeah, it works. It asks you to enter sentence, and if you do just like one word, it'll do it correctly. Or if you do a full bunch of different words, it'll do each of those words. I don't have them nice and aligned, but you know, it actually goes through and applies that to each of them. I did use a for each.
Do it now a simple way. Just remove the word line on wherever you're printing out each word, and they'll come out as all in one line. Just do right, console.write on line 117. I believe is where you're putting it. Just do console.write instead of console.write line.
Couldn't you space after the?
Well, yeah, you'll get help to do that, but that will put them all in one line.
So I do that.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks. But yeah, that's what it does.
So where did you use your split?
I use the split down here in, where is it at?
Oh yeah, I see. 11.
Oh, yeah, right there.
So
Yeah, so I take the English word, so whatever word they put in, and I split that.
and like where is it gonna save to? Out of stream. So you don't have to do. Oh yeah. So that way you don't have to declare the array size, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I try to declare the array size by using space on line, not the arrow of whenever the user do double space. You just add a right after that.
Yeah, the split can be, it's basically acting like you're giving it the array initial values.
Yeah.
It's getting those
Because I try to declare it first. Oh, thank you.
Yep. Oh, and inside of the switch statement, I use this if statement to make it so that if the first letter was Y, then it wouldn't count. It wouldn't add 1 to count, which then wouldn't make one of these statements run, so that it wouldn't, like for words like yellow, it wouldn't do that thing.
Last but not least, we have Taylor, and our good attention.
So I did the Pig Latin. Okay. Can I do something wrong?
You have to request. You have to give.
I'm going to do
Yeah, just request remote.
Oh.
You can do it from there. You can request remote control. Just do that again. Request and Joe can say yes.
Okay. So I have the a bunch of the test sentences or words that we were given, and my program it tests all those, and you press enter. It comes into this while loop that you can just type in any sentence you want. And it will turn it all into Pig Latin, and it will continue looping until you press enter to escape. The actual Pig Latin program is here. I am declaring my vowels here to be able to check. And then here I split the sentence into by spaces, and it works out nicely because if there's only one word, it is only an array at length of 1. And then I have my my variable that stores the completed string that's been pig Latinified. And then I just go through each word inside of my split sentences, and I iterate through each letter, comparing the letters to a vowel. And if it finds a match, it will execute the if statements. So my I have a series of if statements and or nested if loops. The first, or this one here, checks to see if the first if it is the first letter is not a Y and it is a vowel, then it will, do the first rule of the Pig Latin, which is add way. But one of the things I had to do was manually break my loops inside of my if statements by setting the variables to the max in order to get it to stop. But I guess that's it. Oh, and my tester class, which is just a simple while loop.
Is it possible to just use a break instead of what you're talking about, setting to the max?
I tried that, but it only breaks the inside loop. It doesn't break the outside loop. So it will break the first time, and then it will continue on with the word.
I see.
And it will.
There's another reason too to do it the way that Joe had it, because this is like not a branching statement. So it's part of our logic. We can tell as a programmer trying to interpret the code what's happening. A break would tell us what's happening too, but if we miss that, we could inadvertently have trouble on down the road because we didn't realize that something was breaking out of a loop. So any sort of branching statement like that is somewhat discouraged. Careful with those. This logic would show a programmer on down the road what's happening, plus it would cleanly end the loop. So it needs to happen. It's not going to be disruptive. Any other questions or good ones?
You actually like the Visual Studio white background? I've never met anybody that likes the white background.
Yes.
It's just so abrasive.
Don't lie.
Yeah.
You work at that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just
They like the dark. Working with
I like my purple thing now. Code, but I can't get it on here. I can't get off here.
can't get it on.
Yeah, let me go see purple.
All right, guys, did a great job. Thank you. On Discord, in our private Discord server, you should find a zip file that I put in the general channel. See if we can find that. And let's get it downloaded and unzipped. So we can look at our XML stuff.
Visual Studio solution in here. Should we just open that in Visual Studio?
After you extract it,
Well, obviously.
Mine will load it.
Do what?
Mine will load it.
If it would load.
What are we grabbing?
It is a zip file that is on the Discord server. Our C# Discord server. Okay, I'm gonna make a copy of it too. I actually had this one saved on my OneDrive, and it's acted really weird. So I'm glad we're not saving stuff to our OneDrive in general. But I'm gonna go open it.
My little output box is yelling at me about source control bindings.
Yeah, you can just say ignore and no and those kinds of things. I deleted those files hoping it wouldn't gripe at you, but that's source control. It just wants to control everything. So I'm going to be running mine from my OneDrive, so if I have weird errors, we'll know that's what it's from. So I'm going to say no, I do not want to try to enable source control integration, and then click OK. That should allow you to check in the project under your source control. Let's see what we have here in this project. It's kind of a base because I knew we wouldn't have enough time to create this from scratch. So first let's take a look at the student.cs file, the student class. In our student class, let's see, you can go to view or edit. Let me find it. Yeah, edit, outlining, toggle all outlining, and that'll expand all those regions. Or you can just click the plus sign by each of them. It's up to you.
I'm the only one that wouldn't download this.
It's not downloading it from Discord. You might have to refresh or something. Discord seems to once in a while get blocked.
It's got to download this 45.8 KB or 45.8 KB.
So I would cancel it and close Discord and open it again and try again.
Are you saying OTC accidentally occasionally blocks Discord?
No, I think it's their firewall. When it's trying to block HTTPS traffic and it's an encrypted format, it can block accidental things. Is it going to let you have it?
No.
No? I'll post it to. I'll post it. Is it letting you now?
Yeah.
Okay. Taylor, what about you? Is it letting you have it now? Close Discord and reopen it? And it's still not? Try it again. It's really dumb.
In the bottom right corner.
What's down there?
Right click the little Discord thing and hit close.
Oh, to totally close it? Oh, that's good to know. Did it let you? And you closed it from the bottom down here, like you said. Let's see. Everybody else got it okay? Anybody else with trouble? I'm going to email it to you then, Taylor. Yours is JG, right? Okay, you should hopefully get that. Now, while he's getting that, let's take a look again at our student class. Nothing special. It just defines a student. We have first name, last name, major, and GPA. We have private fields for those and public properties. We have getters and setters for both. We have a constructor that sets up all the data fields. We have a default NOARG constructor, and we have an override of the toString method. So we don't have a lot going on in that class. In the form, the data fields are already laid out on the form so that we don't have to spend time doing that. If you view the code that's associated with the form, you'll see the event procedures are already declared, but there's no code in them. And again, I didn't want to take them all out and cause a bunch of errors, but I wanted us to be able to create this. So let me get the other one. Have you gotten that email, sir? Oh, good. I thought it was just going to be mean to you the whole way. I'm going to get my original open so I know what the code should look like. So we want to read an XML file. Let's look at our XML file. The XML file I drug into our project is showing right here in Solution Explorer. So let's just click on it to open it. Oh, nice. Okay, well, let's go look at our file folder then. I'm going to right click and open folder in File Explorer. And let's go into our bin debug. And we should find that XML file there. I'll just open it in Notepad. Told you there's an XML file viewer in Visual Studio that's really nice. But it's kind of weird because it's got to be in our bin debug to read, and then that viewer doesn't actually read it from there. So here's our XML file. It matches up with our class pretty much. We've got first name, last name, major, and GPA. Now these individual tags that we're using in our XML file don't have to match the names of the fields or the properties in our class, but they do just for consistency. So we have 3 students in our XML file, and our file is sitting in our bin debug folder, ready for our program to read. Now, if we want to do any use of the XML classes, we need to include that class library. So it's going to be system.xml, and the X is uppercase, and the M and the L are lowercase.
Which class are you writing this on? Is this on the form class?
Yes,
Okay.
thank you. It's on the form class. So we're going to include that XML library. And for this application, if you look back at the way our form is laid out, we're going to read in those students from the XML file and put their information in this list box. And kind of like our previous applications, if somebody clicks on an item in the list box, we want to show their detail information over here, allowing it to be updated. If somebody updates it, they're going to click the update button, and we want to revise that XML file. So it's not just the list box that we want to change, we also want to change that file. So we've got our using statement in. We're going to need a class level variable to hold our current index value. And this is from our list box. So whenever somebody clicks on an item in our list box, we'll save that location. Now in our form load is where we're going to read our XML file and load it to our list box. So this is going to be the brunt of our code for reading. We're going to use the C# class XML Reader. Told you last time there are some different XML processing classes available. The XML Reader lets us kind of read through an XML file like a text file. We're going to name our reader object Reader, and we're going to say this is a new instance of an XML Reader using the create method, and our file name is studentlist.xml. Now, a better programming standard would be for us to create a variable to hold that XML file name, just as a thought. I have a weird integer here that I don't think I need, so I'm going to leave it out. Now I'd like to create a student instance that I can fill up with information from the XML file. So all I'm going to do is declare a student instance. So we're going to use a student called myStudent in this method. We can go ahead and allocate it using our default constructor. So we'll have a blank student. Now we're going to read that XML file to fill in our student properties. So we're going to use a while loop, and the while loop is going to be controlled by our reader. So while we can read something from our reader, we're going to keep looping. So as long as there are rows in our XML file to read in. Now each time we read a row, we're going to do an if statement. And our if statement is going to be, is this a start element? If we look at our XML file, I'll go back to it, you don't have to. Let me find it again. Every time we have a tag, a begin tag, that's going to be an start element. So every time we read one of these tags, that's going to set that condition true that we're looking at a start element, okay? So we could be looking at the start element that starts the whole thing, our root. We could be looking at the start element that starts a new student, or we could be looking at the start element that starts one of the individual fields for a student. We don't know. We just know that it is one of those types of elements, a start element. I've got to put an open and close parenthesis there because that is a method. Now, if it is one of those start elements, we want to figure out which one. So we can use a switch case statement. Let's use our reader name property, which we found in documentation about XML processing that says, oh, that start element tag is going to be contained in the name property. Or we could do the debugger and see what kind of things we're getting from our reader. In our switch statement, our first case is going to be the word student. If we get the word student, we know we're looking at the beginning of a new student. So if our current student's first name is not equal a null, we know we have some data loaded there that we better save in our list box, because we have to kind of loop through this XML file. You'll see as we go. Now, I'm doing the not equal null on the first name because one of the elements in our student class, our GPA, is a number, so its default value is a 0. So it'll keep our entire class from showing up as null, right? So even though we have an empty instance, it's not going to be null. But if the first name is, then we don't have a student built yet. But if it's not null, we do have a student built, so we're going to add that student to our list box. Now, because we are done with that student, we're going to create a new student instance, again, with all blank data values. And then to finish up that case, I'll use that break statement. So we should be able to run this in the debugger. Let's start with our very first line of code in our form load. where we allocate this XML reader. I'm gonna run, and because this is in our form load, we should see our debugger intercept before we ever see our form. Right now, if you notice, the reader object is there, but it's null. So let's execute that line of code. And now our reader is not null. We can expand it, and we can see there's all sorts of different data elements available from this XML reader object. I'm going to scroll down, and let's see, my name is empty. I don't see much of anything here because I've only created the association with that reader. I haven't actually read any data yet. I'm going to create my new student instance. It's going to jump down to our student class and come back after it's created that instance. And now I'm going to actually read the first item from our XML file. Once I do that, again, I can expand my reader object and see if I've got anything. I'm just kind of looking around. I don't know what's going on here. As a developer that's making a ton load of money, I have to figure these kinds of things out on my own. Oh, look, and I see this value down here. Oh, that's my XML header. So right now I'm looking at my XML header record. So I need to read some more. So I'm going to step into, let it do its loop and read again. Now it says it's a start element. I'm going to look at that reader. Oh, look, my name is student. It is an element. It has no value though, because the XML reader is looking at this line right here that just says student. So there is no, name or anything there. So I'm going to close out of this debugger. I'm going to come back to it a little bit later after we've done a little bit more. So if you notice, you can see what's going on using the debugger, even though we don't know anything about that XML reader and we're finding code online, we can use the debugger to help us learn what kind of data that object carries for us. Okay, so we said if we get a new student, we need to add to our list and create a new student instance. This is kind of backwards because you guys are seeing it after it's already been solved instead of solving it. Now, in the case that we're looking at a node that is the first name, now we should be able to make more sense. I need the reader to read the next element to give me the value of that first name. And this is why, you get this in here. This is why using the XML reader can be a little confusing. You have to find the element you're looking for and then read the next thing in the XML file to get the value, the data value associated with that element. So we found the first name. Let's read the next item in our XML file and grab the value. Now we need to do that same thing for each of our fields. So in the case that we're looking at the last name, we're going to read the next thing in the XML file and then update our student last name property with that value. And then break. So we're continuing to read through this XML file, and every time we get a new row, the XML file, the XML reader is doing its own certain processing. And it's like, okay, the next thing you're going to have is that value. Now, I've seen people, as they're developing these applications, set Booleans and set all sorts of different things to say the next thing you're going to find is going to be the last name, or the next thing you're going to find is the first name. But we don't need to go through our whole loop again, we can just go right to the next thing and grab our value. So I'm gonna run this. I am missing a few things. That's all right. Get a few of our people in there. We're missing one, aren't we? Now, I'd like to be able to click on one. I got some debugging to do to see why we're missing one, but I'd like to be able to click on one and have their data show in these text boxes. So let's put that code in so that you have a good example. That's going to be in our selected index changed method. So in our selected index changed method, we want to update our IDX variable, our class level variable that keeps track of the selected index. So let's save the selected line. Then, because we've saved that, we want to grab that information that's in our list box and recreate the student object that was originally used to populate the list box. So I'm taking the index value that we saved and looking at the items in our list box, casting that item as a student and saving that in our A student object. Now I can load our text boxes from that object. So our first name, that text is going to be a student dot F name. Same thing for all of them. Our last name, text box will be a student dot last name. Their major. Now with our GPA, we have a numeric field. So what should I do there? I just do a .toString. If I mouse over it, it says that I can't implicitly convert a float to a string. So I should be able to just do a toString. So let's see, that should work. I'm going to run it. Click on Joy, and I see that data there. Everybody good? What's the matter? Can you show us? You want to? You fix it? Are you sure? Because we can help. So the bug that we have where we're only seeing 2 entries is because we need to save that very last student. So I'm going to copy this if statement.
I have a slightly different problem, actually.
Do you?
Mine isn't loading in the middle.
Oh, okay. Well, let's copy this if statement and we'll take a look at yours. So I'm going to copy that if statement and I want to put it down after the while loop so that we save that final student. And then this was our switch case. Now let us test that and then we'll look at yours and see if we can find a problem. I'm gonna run this and just make sure we're getting that third person. And we are getting that third person, so good deal. All right. Let me release mine and see what's going on. Okay, Seth, can you share yours?
This is where we're at.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got the while loop. We've got if this is in fact a starting element,
Okay, good.
check the tag name. If it's this one, and it's not a null student, then we do this part.
Mm-hmm.
And then we check first name, the last name. It should be just
That looks good. Scroll up a little higher.
higher than that, or
When you set a, can you set a breakpoint on that first line in your form load, and let's just make sure it's executing that properly. Just go over a little further to the gray. Little further over. There you go. Okay, now let's just run it. Okay, that looks good. It's starting there. Go ahead and step into, it's going to be, you see the red square? It's going to be a couple over from that. So one more, step into, that's what we want. And then F11 will continue to do it. So we can step through your code and let's see. So it's creating the student, that looks good. Now we're going to start our while loop. And it's finding something, so that looks good. Keep going. Keep going. Okay.
what?
It's just not going to show you the property. You can say yes or no, either one. It's just not going down into the class level. So that looks like it should be working.
Were we supposed to set the index as zero?
Hmm?
Were we supposed to set the index?
Yeah, at the top here.
What do you see?
They're asking why I
Oh.
set my index to 0.
Oh, okay.
Because I wanted to give it a default value in case it somehow got called before it was set. Just have it.
Because your value is looking good. So you should be able to go ahead and click that little arrow to continue running. Yeah. Still just not getting anything, huh?
Is there a reason why my student is lit up as blue instead of white? Is that just
Close out of that form and let's see what Austin is saying.
What is Austin saying?
He's saying your my student is blue.
Yes, the student, my student.
That's just my settings. That is exactly the color it should be. Because like if you see, here's another object and it's blue.
What were you guys saying?
How'd you do that? I like that better.
It came that way. It came that way and I didn't question
Did
it.
you guys have an idea back there?
I mean, you also have the same problem, I think, that's showing up.
Yeah. And we're reading stuff. Let's go ahead and set a breakpoint right there where we add to the list box on that one line of code. Yeah. And then let's run again and make sure that that actually gets executed. It never did. Well, let's just do our update so that everybody has the code, and then we'll do some debugging. So let's put our update code in because I want everybody to see it, and then we can fix the problems. Because we're going to run out of time. It is such. Okay, I'm going to take over. And then we'll try to fix you guys that aren't working. So I want to look at this update button, click, and let's go ahead and put this code in, even if you're having some issues. Before we update, in our selected index changed method, this method will fire if we click on an item in our list, but it will also fire if we update an item in our list from our code. And we don't want that to happen. So we're going to put an if statement here to say if our list box selected index equals -1. Remember, that's the value that means nothing is selected. We're going to not, oh, we want it to be not equal, sorry. If it's equal to -1, then nothing has been selected. So we only want to update our text boxes if one is selected. Spit that out slowly. Okay, so our update. Now, in our update, we have some different options, and if you guys do some research on the different XML classes, you'll see if we use an XML document, we would just be able to tell it to update this certain area. But we didn't. We used the XML Reader, so things are a little different. So in our update class, first we're going to create a student object again. Now, this new student, I want to create this new student from our text box data. So from our first name, because this could have been updated. And I'm going to kind of just try to indent here. Our last name is our next parameter. Our major. And lastly, our GPA. Now our text box is a string and our GPA field is float. So what can I do there to take care of that? A lot of conversions. Float.parse. That'll work. Now, of course, we should be doing some editing, but right now we're focusing on our XML file. So now I've said, oh, here's my new student, because if they updated those text box values, I want to grab those updates. At this point, I don't really care if they did or not, but if they did, I want to get those new values. I'm going to shove those new values then into our list box at the position where this student was before. So let's run that right now. We should be able to see John and change his last name. And then we see it updated in the list box because we're changing that item. All right, so that took care of our list box. What about our XML file? In our XML file, when we created our reader, I'm going to scroll up to our code where our reader is. When we created our reader, we associated it with a file. And behind the scenes, this XML reader was opening that file. We need to release the resources associated with that file. At the end of our method, before it closes, we need to say reader.dispose. And then we're saying, release all those resources, close that file, make sure everything is all set to where we're not wasting any resources. So now, in our update, we can use an XML Writer object to update our file. We're going to use the same create method that we used to open our reader. I'm going to create a new file, though, called student list UPD, just for testing, just so we don't wipe out our good XML file. But we would really want to update it. With our XML writer, we know the create is going to open the file and start outputting things. We can use a special clause called a using clause. I'm going to put that in the front here. The using clause says, I have a block of code that's going to be using this resource. When you get to the end of the using block, this resource will be disposed. So we don't have to code in the information to do that close or that dispose. Now the using block is going to be delineated by opening and closing curly braces, just like our other block type commands. So besides XML here, we've got just a little thing going. So now I've got everything all set with my writer. The first thing I need to do is I'm going to write out the whole file all over again. I'm not going to update just one spot. I'm just going to start at the beginning and write out the whole thing. So the first thing I need is that XML header. And that can be written by the command write start document. And that's just the XML method that writes out that XML header. Next, we want to write out our start element that says the word students. That's our beginning. That's like our root element. We have 2 minutes. We can do it. Then for each student in our list box, we're going to write that information out to our XML file. And it's almost easier than reading it in, because we're going to say, first of all, we want to write out a start element that says student, one student. Then we're going to write another type of data, an element string, out to our XML file. The tag is going to be FName. The data is going to be our FName property from our student instance. Now I'm going to need to repeat this for each data field. And then, after all of the data fields are output, I can force it to write the end element for our student. So we're going to use write end element. And that should do it. After we run our update, then we should have a new XML file with the updated values.
Does that just write all the end elements?
the write element string will write the begin tag, the data, and the end tag for that one. So there's so many different types of elements, but that'll take care of that. Okay, so I know we have some people that are having some issues. So let's save all this because we are out of time and knew we would be running close. So this is going to be a pretty good example for what you need for your library assignment. You still need to do some research on XML files. Decide if this is the class that you would like to use. That one we'll look at next Wednesday. So let's see if we can fix the ones that are having trouble. We are past time. Thank you, guys.
So it will